They were known in the agency as the Three Horsemen of the Apocalypse, triplets who had sent 12 highly qualified nannies to therapy in a single month. Their father, Dante Moretti. He's the ruthless CEO of Moretti Global and the rumored head of the New York underworld, a man who treats childcare like a military operation and trusts absolutely no one. Camille Rivera didn't take the job because she was brave. She took it because she was $70,000 in debt, dangerously desperate, and had exactly 48 hours to come up with the money. She expected hell. She didn't expect to tame the devil. Here is the true-to-life story of how a broke maid and a plate of pancakes changed the fate of the most dangerous family in the city. The eviction notice taped to the peeling paint of apartment 4B wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a tombstone. Camille Rivera stared at the bold red letters, "Final Notice," and felt the familiar, cold knot of panic tighten in her stomach. It was raining in Queens, a grey, relentless drizzle that matched the color of her bank account balance, negative $400. She adjusted the strap of her worn canvas tote bag, the one she'd bought at a thrift store in Astoria 3 years ago, and unlocked her door. Inside, the apartment smelled of stale coffee and impending doom. Her phone buzzed on the counter. It was unknown number. She knew who it was. It was Sal. She didn't pick up. She couldn't pay Sal today. She couldn't pay the landlord. She couldn't even pay for the subway ride to Manhattan, having jumped the turnstile earlier that morning in a moment of desperate criminality that made her hands shake. "I need a miracle," she whispered to the empty room. The miracle came in the form of a phone call 10 minutes later, but it sounded a lot like a death sentence. "Camille, it's Mrs. Gable from Elite Domestics." The voice on the other end clipped, sharp as a glass shard. "Mrs. Gable." Camille sat up straighter, clutching the phone. "Please tell me you have something. Cleaning, dog walking, anything. I'll scrub toilets at Grand Central, I don't care." There was a long, heavy pause on the line. "There is one position. It just opened up. Again. For the 3rd time this week. I'll take it. You haven't heard the client's name yet, Camille." Mrs. Gable lowered her voice, a rare break in her professional veneer. "It's the Moretti estate in Saddle River." Camille froze. Even in her world, the world of service staff, invisible cleaners, and silent housekeepers, the name Moretti was spoken in hushed tones. Dante Moretti, the press called him a shipping magnate and a philanthropist. The streets called him the Capo dei Capi. He was a widower with 3 children, and the rumor was that his estate, Il Castello, was where nannies went to have their spirits broken. "The triplets?" Camille asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The triplets," Gable confirmed grimly. "They bit the last one. Actually drew blood. She left without her shoes. The pay is $4,000 a week, cash, plus a $20,000 bonus if you last 3 months. But nobody lasts 48 hours. The agency is about to blacklist the family. You are literally the last name on my list who hasn't refused. $20,000. That would clear her debt to Sal. It would save the apartment. When do I start?" "A car is already on its way. A black Mercedes Maybach. Don't look the driver in the eye, Camille. And for God's sake, don't touch anything you aren't told to touch." 2 hours later, Camille was sitting in the back of a vehicle that cost more than her entire apartment building. The leather seats smelled of rich mahogany and fear. They had driven out of the city, past the clutter of the suburbs, and into the heavily gated, forested hills of New Jersey's wealthiest enclave. The gates to the Moretti estate were 12 feet of wrought iron, topped with gold-leafed spikes. As they swung open, Camille saw the house. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as a French chateau. Limestone walls, slate roof, cameras pivoting on every corner like distinct mechanical eyes. The car stopped. The driver, a man with a neck as thick as a tree stump and a scar running through his left eyebrow, opened her door. "Wait here," he grunted. Camille stepped onto the gravel driveway. The air here was cleaner, colder, Before she could take a breath, the massive oak front doors banged open. A young woman, no older than 25, stumbled out. She was wearing a uniform that was torn at the shoulder. Her hair was matted with what looked like green slime, and she was sobbing hysterically. I can't do it," the girl screamed, running past Camille towards the gate, stumbling in her stocking feet. "They're monsters. They aren't children, they're demons. Tell him he can keep the money. I just want to go home." She vanished down the driveway. Camille stood frozen. The front door remained open. From the darkness of the hallway, a man emerged. He was tall, over 6'3", wearing a charcoal three-piece Brioni suit that fit him with lethal precision. His hair was dark, swept back, and his eyes were the color of cold espresso. He looked at the fleeing girl, then shifted his gaze to Camille. He didn't look impressed. He looked exhausted. This was Dante Moretti. He checked a Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. "You're the replacement?" "I'm Camille," she managed to say, clutching her tote bag. "You're late," Dante said, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated in Camille's chest. "The agency said you were desperate. Are you desperate enough to handle 3 5-year-olds who have weaponized slime?" Camille thought of Sal. She thought of the eviction notice. She looked Dante Moretti in the eye. "Mr. Moretti, I grew up with 4 brothers in a 1-bedroom apartment in the Bronx. I don't scare easy." Dante raised an eyebrow. A flicker of interest. Or maybe just amusement. "We'll see," he said, turning his back on her. "You have 48 hours. If the house is still standing and my children are alive by Monday morning, you get the job. If not, you walk home." The interior of Il Castello was a museum of cold perfection. Marble floors that reflected Camille's scuffed sneakers, chandeliers that dripped crystal like frozen tears, and an utter, terrifying silence. "Where are they?" Camille whispered to herself as she followed the house manager, a stern man named Giovanni, who looked like he slept in a tuxedo. "Master Dante is in his study. He is not to be disturbed under any circumstances," Giovanni recited, walking briskly. "The children are in the West Wing playroom. We have locked the door from the outside to ensure they do not migrate. You locked them in." Camille frowned. "It is for the staff's safety, Miss Rivera." The last nanny, Miss Halloway, attempted to read them Goodnight Moon. Master Leo set fire to the book, using a magnifying glass he stole from his father's desk. Giovanni stopped in front of a heavy double door. He handed Camille a keycard. "Godspeed," he said. And then, remarkably, he retreated down the hall as if anticipating an explosion. Camille took a deep breath. She swiped the card. The light turned green. She pushed the door open. The room was massive. It was stocked with every toy imaginable. A miniature Ferrari, a ball pit the size of a swimming pool, a custom-built climbing wall. But the room was in chaos. Paint was splattered on the silk wallpaper. Feathers from torn pillows covered the floor like snow. In the center of the room sat 3 identical boys with dark curls and angelic faces. They stopped what they were doing and looked at her. One was holding a cricket bat. One was holding a bottle of industrial glue. The third was sitting quietly, holding an iPad, watching her with narrowed, calculating eyes. "Who are you?" the one with the bat demanded. This had to be Leo, the ringleader. "I'm Camille," she said, keeping her voice level. She didn't smile. Kids like this smelled fear in a smile. She walked into the room and closed the door behind her, locking it from the inside. The boys exchanged looks. They weren't used to the nannies locking themselves in. "I'm Rocco," said the one with the glue. He grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "Do you bounce?" "Excuse me?" The last one bounced when she fell off the chair. Rocco said matter-of-factly. "I don't bounce," Camille said, dropping her bag on a pristine white sofa that had miraculously survived the carnage. "And I don't run. So you can put the glue down, Rocco." The quiet one, Enzo, finally spoke. He didn't look up from his iPad. "Dad hired you because you're cheap. I heard him on the phone. He said, 'Send me the one who needs the money. She'll stay.'" The word stung. hitting Camille right in her pride. But they were true. "Your dad is a smart man," Camille said, moving toward the window to open the heavy velvet drapes, letting in the grey afternoon light. "I do need the money, which means I'm not going anywhere." "Now who's hungry?" "We don't eat nanny food," Leo sneered. "We only eat what Chef Marco makes, but Chef Marco quit yesterday because Rocco put a frog in the blender." Camille blinked. "Jesus. Well," Camille said, rolling up her sleeves, "I'm not Chef Marco, and I'm not making you foie gras. I'm making pancakes." "Pancakes are for babies," Leo challenged, stepping in closer, swinging the cricket bat lazily. "Not the way I make them." Camille lied. She had no idea how she was going to make pancakes. She didn't even know where the kitchen was. But she knew one thing about boys. They were always hungry, and they were bored of perfection. She looked at Leo. "Put the bat down, or I put it in the trash." Leo laughed. It was a cold, adult sound coming from a child. "You can't touch us. My dad will kill you." "Your dad gave me 48 hours to keep you alive," Camille said, crouching down so she was eye level with him. "He didn't say I couldn't put you in timeout. And trust me, Leo, in my house, timeout involved staring at a wall for 3 hours. Leo hesitated. For the first time, he looked unsure. Suddenly the door buzzed. The intercom on the wall crackled. It was Dante's voice. "Miss Rivera, bring the children to the dining hall. Immediately, we have guests." The triplets' eyes widened. The guest usually meant business associates, men with scars and guns. "Guests?" Enzo whispered, his face paling. "Is it Mr. Vieira?" Camille noticed the shift in atmosphere instantly. The bravado vanished. The boys weren't little monsters anymore. They were terrified children. "Who is Mr. Vieira?" Camille asked. "The bad man," Rocco whispered, dropping the glue. "He yells at Papa." Camille felt a protective instinct flare up in her chest, surprising her. She stood up. "All right? Everyone shoes on, shirts tucked in. We're going downstairs." "We can't," Leo said, his voice trembling. "We painted our suits." He pointed to the corner. 3 miniature Armani suits were piled in a heap, covered in neon orange acrylic paint. Camille looked at the clock. They had 5 minutes. "Okay," Camille said, her mind racing. She grabbed a pair of scissors from the craft table and a roll of duct tape. "Improvise. Grab those white t-shirts. Move now." 5 minutes later, Camille marched the 3 boys into the grand dining hall. The room was tense. Dante sat at the head of a 20-foot mahogany table. Opposite him sat a man who looked like a reptile in a suit. Slicked back hair, pointed features, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. 2 massive bodyguards stood behind him. This was Luca Vieira, the rival Don of the Jersey Syndicate. Dante looked up as the boys entered. His eyes widened slightly. The boys were not wearing their suits. They were wearing white t-shirts that had been artistically slashed and tied with black ribbon. Camille's hair ribbons, to look like avant-garde designer wear. They looked like a miniature punk rock band. It was weird, but it was stylish. "What is this?" Dante asked, his voice low and dangerous. "New trend from Milan, Mr. Moretti," Camille said smoothly, stepping forward. She placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. She could feel the boy shaking. Deconstructed formal wear. Very popular this season. Luca Vieira let out a bark of laughter. "Milan? They look like street urchins, Dante. Is this how you raise the heirs to the Moretti Empire? In rags?" Dante's jaw tightened. He looked at Camille. For a second, she thought he was going to fire her on the spot. Then he looked at Luca. "It's called sprezzatura, Luca. Studied carelessness. Perhaps you're too old to understand modern fashion." Luca's smile vanished. "Go sit, boys," Dante commanded. The boys scrambled to their seats, looking at Camille with wide, bewildered eyes. She had saved them. She had lied to the Don, and she had survived. Camille stood by the wall, trying to blend in. As the servers brought out wine, she watched Dante. He was powerful, yes. But looking at the way his hand clenched his wine glass when Luca mentioned territory, She realized something else. He was trapped. Just like her. So, Luca said, slicing into a steak, I hear you're having trouble with security, Dante. Nanny is leaving. Staff quitting. A man who can't control his own house can hardly control the port, can he? My house is perfectly under control, Dante said icily. Is it? Luca gestured to Camille with his knife. Who is this? Another temp? How long will this one last? Until dessert. Dante turned his gaze to Camille. Their eyes met. She's not a temp, Dante said. She's the new governess, and she's staying. Camille's heart hammered against her ribs. She had survived the first hour. Only 47 more to go. But as she watched Luca Vieira eyeing the children like a wolf eyeing lambs, she realized the job description was missing a key detail. She wasn't just here to watch the kids. She was going to have to protect them. The sun rose over the Saddle River estate like a bruised peach, casting long, ominous shadows across the immaculate lawns of Il Castello. Inside the mansion, the silence was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes an explosion. Camille had slept, if you could call it that, in the guest wing, fully clothed, with a chair wedged under the doorknob. She woke up at 5 a.m., her body aching from the tension of the previous night. She had survived the dinner with Luca Vieira. She had survived the triplets' initial assault. But now came the real test. Morning. She wandered down to the kitchen. It was a cavernous space of stainless steel and black marble, equipped to feed an army, yet completely devoid of warmth. The previous chef, Marco, had fled so quickly he'd left his favorite knife set behind. Camille opened the refrigerator. It was stocked with ingredients that cost more than her monthly rent. Truffles, Wagyu beef, imported burrata. But there was no milk, no eggs, no flour. Rich people, Camille muttered, shaking her head. They have caviar but no cereal. She found a pantry hidden behind a force panel. Inside she struck gold, a dusty bag of all-purpose flour, a tin of baking powder, and a jar of vanilla extract that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Bush administration. She found a carton of eggs in the staff fridge and a jug of milk that smelled okay. All right, she whispered, tying a dish towel around her waist as an apron. Let's see if the Bronx special works in a castle. She began to whisk. It was a rhythm she knew well. When her mother had worked double shifts and the fridge was empty, Camille made miracle pancakes, flour, water, if milk ran out, and whatever sugar packets she could steal from the diner down the street. It was comfort food born of necessity. At 6:30 a.m., the kitchen door creaked open. Camille didn't turn around. If you're going to throw something, Leo, aim for the sink. I just mopped the floor. There was a pause, then a small voice. How did you know it was me? I have eyes in the back of my head. All nannies do. It's in the contract. Camille flipped a pancake. It sizzled, golden brown and perfect, smelling of vanilla and caramelized sugar. Leo, Rocco, and Enzo shuffled into the room. They were wearing silk pajamas that probably cost $1,000, but their hair was messy and they looked small. Without the props of cricket bats and glue, they were just hungry 5-year-olds. What's that smell? Rocco asked, sniffing the air. It doesn't smell like Chef Marco's food. His food smells like old socks and sadness. It's pancakes, Camille said. She plated 3 stacks, sliding them onto the island counter. But not just any pancakes. These are Iron Man pancakes. They make you strong enough to fight bad guys. Enzo, the skeptic, eyed the plate. It's just flour and eggs. I know the chemical composition. Ah, Camille tapped her nose, but you're forgetting the secret ingredient. What is it? Leo demanded. Love, Rocco guessed, wrinkling his nose. No, Camille deadpanned. Spite. I made them delicious, so you'd have to admit I'm a good cook, which would annoy you. The boys stared at her. Then, slowly, Leo cracked a smile. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen. They ate. They didn't just eat. They devoured. They ate with their hands, getting syrup on their expensive pajamas, laughing as Rocco tried to fit a whole pancake in his mouth. For 10 minutes, silent. The kitchen wasn't a war zone. It was a home. Camille watched them, a strange warmth spreading in her chest. She poured herself a cup of black coffee and leaned against the counter. Then, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dante Moretti stood in the doorway. He was dressed for work, wearing a navy suit that made his broad shoulders look even wider. He held a tablet in one hand and a phone in the other. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. His terrifying children, covered in syrup, laughing with the woman he had expected to fire by noon. "What is happening here?" Dante asked, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. The boys froze. Leo dropped his fork. The joy evaporated instantly, replaced by the stiff, fearful posture they had adopted the night before. "Breakfast, Mr. Moretti," Camille said, stepping between him and the boys. She didn't flinch. "Would you like a plate? There's one left." Dante looked at the plate. Then he looked at Camille. His eyes were dark, unreadable pools of suspicion. "I don't eat carbohydrates," he said coldly, "and the children are on a strict nutritional plan. High protein, low sugar. Who authorized this mess?" "I did," Camille said. "They were hungry. The chef is gone. And frankly, sir, they're 5. They need energy to grow, not a keto diet designed for a middle-aged bodybuilder." Dante's eyes narrowed. The air crackled with tension. The staff usually trembled when he spoke. Camille Rivera just offered him syrup. "You have a sharp tongue, Miss Rivera," Dante said, walking into the kitchen. He moved with the grace of a predator. He stopped inches from her. She could smell his cologne, sandalwood, leather, and something metallic, like gun oil. "Be careful you don't cut yourself with it." "I'm good with knives," Camille replied, holding his gaze. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then his gaze drifted to the plate of pancakes. He hesitated. It was a moment of weakness, a crack in the armor. He reached out, tore a small piece off the edge of a pancake, and put it in his mouth. Camille held her breath. Dante chewed slowly. His expression didn't change, but his eyes softened, just for a fraction of a second. A memory seemed to flash behind them, something distant and painful. "My mother," he said quietly, almost to himself. "She used to use vanilla." The kitchen went silent. The boys looked at their father in shock. He never spoke about his family. He never spoke about the past. Dante cleared his throat, the mask slamming back into place. "They are adequate. Clean this up, and get the children ready. We have a security drill at 10 a.m. He turned to leave. "Mr. Moretti," Camille called out. He stopped, his hand on the doorframe. "The boys," she said, gesturing to the triplets who were watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. "They aren't soldiers. They don't need drills. They need to go to the park." Dante turned back slowly. "We do not go to the park, Miss Rivera. We are not a normal family. There are people who would pay millions to take them. If they leave this estate, they die. Do you understand?" The harshness of his words hung in the air. Camille saw the fear return to Leo's eyes. "I understand," Camille said softly. "But a cage is still a cage, even if it's made of gold." Dante looked at her, his jaw tightening. "Keep them alive, Camille. That is your only job. Do not try to be their mother. They don't have one." He walked out, leaving a wake of cold air and the scent of expensive cologne. Camille turned back to the boys. They looked crushed. "Okay," Camille said, clapping her hands, forcing a brightness she didn't feel. "Who wants to see a magic trick? I bet I can make this syrup bottle disappear." She had won the battle of breakfast, but she was starting to realize that the war for this family's soul was going to be much, much harder. The security drill was less of a drill and more of a military exercise. At 10 a.m. sharp, the estate's alarms blared. Steel shutters slammed down over the windows. A team of 6 armed guards, led by the head of security, a man named Russo, swept through the house. Camille and the triplets were herded into the panic room, a reinforced bunker behind the library bookshelves. It was stocked with oxygen tanks, MREs, and a wall of monitors showing every angle of the property. "Is this normal?" Camille asked, clutching Enzo's hand. The boy was shaking. "Every Tuesday," Leo said dully. He was playing with a loose thread on his shirt. "Papa says we have to be ready for the bad men." "Who are the bad men?" Camille asked gently. "Everyone," Rocco whispered. "Papa says everyone wants to hurt us." Camille looked at the monitors. On the screen, she saw Dante walking the perimeter with Russo. He looked like a general inspecting his troops. He was pointing at fence lines, checking camera angles. He looked powerful, yes. But he also looked incredibly lonely. Suddenly one of the monitors flickered. Camille frowned. What was that? "Glitch," Leo said. "It happens." "No," Camille said, leaning closer to the screen. She had grown up in a neighborhood where you learned to watch the corners, where a flickering street lamp meant someone had tampered with it. "That wasn't a glitch. The feed looped. Look at the clouds. They jumped back." She pointed to the screen showing the North Gate, the service entrance for delivery trucks. On the screen, a cloud moved left, then jerked back to the right. "The camera is on a loop," Camille realized, her blood running cold. Someone hacked the feed. She grabbed the intercom on the wall. "Mr. Moretti, can you hear me?" Static. The line was dead. "Stay here," Camille ordered the boys. "Do not open this door for anyone but me or your father. Do you understand? Lock it behind me." "You can't go out there," Enzo cried, grabbing her arm. "It's not safe." "I have to warn him," Camille said. She looked at the three terrified faces. "I promise to keep you safe. That includes your dad." She slipped out of the panic room and heard the heavy bolts slide home behind her. The house was silent. The alarms had been cut. That was bad. That was very bad. Camille took off her shoes to move silently on the marble. She crept toward the library doors. Through the window she could see the garden. Dante and Russo were by the fountain, their backs to the North Gate. They were talking, unaware. And behind them, slipping through the shadows of the perfectly manicured hedges, were three figures dressed in black. They weren't security. They moved like wraiths. Camille scanned the room for a weapon. Nothing. Just books and priceless vases. She ran to the French doors. They were locked. She grabbed a heavy bronze bust of Julius Caesar from a pedestal. "Sorry, Julius," she thought. She smashed the glass. The sound was like a gunshot. Outside, Dante spun around, his hand flying to the holster under his jacket. Russo drew his weapon. "Behind you!" Camille screamed, stepping through the shattered glass shards slicing her bare feet. "Dante, the North Gate." Dante didn't hesitate. He didn't look at her. He looked where she pointed. He dropped to a crouch just as a silenced shot chipped the stone fountain where his head had been a second ago. "Contact rear," Russo shouted into his radio. Chaos erupted. The three intruders opened fire. Dante returned fire with a terrifying precision, moving toward the cover of a stone planter. Russo took a hit to the shoulder and went down, firing blindly. One of the intruders broke away from the group. He wasn't aiming for Dante. He was sprinting towards the house, toward the shattered French doors, toward Camille, and the panic room behind her. Camille froze. The man was huge, wearing a balaclava. He held a knife, having discarded his jammed pistol. She backed up into the library. "Get back!" The man laughed, a low, guttural sound. "Boss said no witnesses. Pretty little Nanny. Bad luck for you." He lunged. Camille didn't think. She reacted. Years of dodging grasping hands in crowded subways. Years of fighting off drunks in the alley behind the diner where she worked. She sidestepped his lunge, grabbing a heavy, leather-bound encyclopedia from the desk. As he stumbled past her, she swung the book with all her strength. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening thud. The man groaned and staggered, but didn't fall. He turned, eyes burning with rage through the mask. He backhanded her. Camille flew backward, hitting the floor hard. Her vision swam. She tasted blood. The man stood over her, raising the knife. "Say goodnight, princess." Bang! The man's head snapped back. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut, landing inches from Camille's legs. Camille looked up, gasping for air. Dante stood in the doorway, his gun smoking, his chest heaving. His suit was torn, his face streaked with dirt. He looked like the devil himself. He stepped over the body and fell to his knees beside her. For the first time, his composure was completely gone. "Camille," he said, his voice rough. He touched her face, his fingers trembling slightly. "Are you hit? Did he cut you?" "I'm okay," Camille stammered, trying to sit up. "The boys, the panic room, they're safe. My men have secured the perimeter. The others are dead." Dante's eyes scanned her body frantically, looking for wounds. He saw the blood on her lip. His eyes darkened to pitch black. "He touched you," Dante growled. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fury. "I hit him with a book." Camille managed a weak smile. "Volume AC." Dante stared at her. Adrenaline was still coursing through both of them, making the air vibrate. He looked at the dead man, then back at the woman who had smashed a window to save his life. "You saved me," Dante said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "You saw them when my own security didn't." "The camera loop," Camille whispered. "Old trick. Saw it in a movie once." Dante didn't laugh. He reached out and wiped the blood from her lip with his thumb. The touch was electric. Camille felt a jolt go straight to her core. "You are not a nanny," Dante murmured, his face inches from hers. "Who are you, Camille Rivera?" "Just a broke maid who needs to pay rent," she whispered. Dante's gaze dropped to her lips. For a second, just a heartbeat, Camille thought he was going to kiss her. The danger, the blood, the adrenaline. It was a potent cocktail. Then heavy boots stomped into the room. "Boss secure. We have the area locked down." It was the backup team. Dante pulled back, the mask returning instantly. He stood up and offered her a hand. "Get up," he said, his voice cool again, though his eyes were still burning. "Dr. Evans is on his way to check the boys. Have him look at your face." He turned to the security team. "Find out who sent them. I want a name within the hour. And clean this up. I don't want the children to see blood." He walked away without looking back. But as he reached the door, he paused. "Rivera." Camille looked up, clutching her bruising ribs. "Yes, sir?" "You just earned your bonus," Dante said. "And the 48 hours, forget them. You're not going anywhere." Camille watched him go. She touched her lip where his thumb had been. She had secured the job. She had the money. But as she looked at the dead man on the floor, she realized she was in much deeper than she had ever intended. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a target, and worse, she was starting to care about the man who put the target on her back. The adrenaline crash was brutal. 2 hours after the attack, the police had come and gone, paid off or intimidated into silence. Camille wasn't sure which. The bodies were gone. The shattered glass in the library had been swept away, replaced by a temporary board that looked like a scar on the mansion's perfect face. Camille sat on the edge of the oversized bathtub in her suite, holding a bag of frozen peas to her cheek. Her ribs throbbed with every heartbeat. She had refused the hospital. She couldn't leave the boys. Not now. There was a soft knock on the door. It wasn't the tentative knock of a child. It was the heavy, decisive knock of the master of the house. "Come in," she winced. Dante entered. He had showered and changed into a fresh shirt, but he looked haggard. The invincible CEO mask had slipped, revealing a man who had almost lost everything. He held a small first aid kit in one hand and a glass of amber liquid in the other. "Bourbon," he said, setting the glass on the vanity. "For the shock. It's older than you are." "I don't drink on the job," Camille said, though her hands were shaking. "You're not on the job right now. You're the woman who saved my life." Dante opened the kit. "Let me see that cut." He stepped between her knees, invading her personal space with an ease that made her breath hitch. He dipped a cotton swab in antiseptic. "This will sting," he murmured. He dabbed the cut on her lip. Camille hissed, gripping his forearm reflexively. His muscle was hard as rock under the silk shirt. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand lingered on her jaw, his thumb brushing against her pulse point. "Why did you do it?" Dante asked, his voice low and rough. "You could have run. Most people would have run." "I told you," Camille whispered, looking up into his dark, tormented eyes. "I don't run, and I couldn't leave them. Or you." The admission hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. "You should leave," Dante said, pulling back slightly. "You'll see what my life is now. It's not a job, Camille. It's a war zone. Vieira won't stop. Today was a warning. Next time, they might not miss." "Are you firing me?" "I'm trying to save you," Dante said, his voice cracking. "I am poison to everything I touch. My wife, she died because of me, because she was close to me. I won't let that happen to you." "I'm not your wife," Camille said fiercely, standing up. She winced as her ribs protested, but she stood her ground. "And I'm not a damsel in distress. I grew up fighting for scraps, Dante. I know how to survive." "Do you?" Dante stared at her, stunned by her defiance. "You think you can survive this?" he challenged, stepping closer until their chests were almost touching. "This isn't a street fight in the Bronx. This is the Syndicate. They will burn this house down with us inside." "Then let them try," Camille said. "But I'm not leaving those boys. And I'm not leaving you to fight alone." Something inside Dante snapped. The restraint he had held onto for years, the icy control that kept him sane, shattered. He reached out, weaving his hands into her hair, and pulled her to him. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate, fueled by fear and relief and a hunger that had been starving for years. Camille melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck, the taste of bourbon and danger on his lips. For a moment, the war didn't matter, the debt didn't matter. There was only the heat of his body and the frantic beating of their hearts. He pulled back, breathless, resting his forehead against hers. "I can't promise you safety," he whispered. "I didn't ask for safety," Camille replied. "I asked for a job, and I think I just got a promotion." Dante let out a short, incredulous laugh. "God help me, I think you did." Suddenly his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. He sighed, pulling away to check the screen. His expression instantly hardened into stone. The lover was gone. The dawn was back. "What is it?" Camille asked, the cold knot of fear returning. "My private investigator," Dante said, his voice deadly calm. "He found the leak, the camera loop. It wasn't hacked from the outside. It was done from the inside." "Who?" Dante looked at her, on his eyes full of betrayal. "The only person with the access codes besides me and Russo. A man who raised me. Giovanni," Camille gasped. "He's been feeding Vieira information for months," Dante said, holstering his gun. "Get the boys, lock the door. I have to go handle this." "Dante, wait. Lock the door, Camille." He turned and walked out, into the darkness of the hallway. The house was silent again. But this time it felt like a tomb. Camille hurried to the boys' room. They were asleep, huddled together in a pile of limbs and blankets on Laio's bed. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. She sat in the armchair by the door, a heavy brass lamp within reach, and waited. An hour passed, then two. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. "It's done. Giovanni is gone. Vieira knows we know. Stay put." Camille let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was over. The traitor was gone. But something nagged at her. A detail from the attack. The gunman in the library. He hadn't gone for Dante. He had come straight for her and the panic room. He knew exactly where they would be. Giovanni knew the codes, yes, but Giovanni was old. He didn't know the daily schedule. He didn't know about the pancake breakfast that had delayed their drill by 10 minutes. If the drill had started on time, they would have been in the garden when the shooters arrived. Because they were late. They were inside. Whoever planned the attack expected them to be outside. The realization hit Camille like a physical blow. The leak wasn't just about codes, it was about routine. Suddenly the bedroom door handle turned. Camille jumped up, gripping the lamp. "Who is it?" "It's me, Miss Rivera," a voice whispered. "Russo, Mr. Moretti sent me. We have to move the boys. Vieira is launching a second wave." Russo, the head of security, the man who had taken a bullet to the shoulder during the attack. Camille hesitated. "Dante told me to stay put." "That was before we intercepted the chatter." Russo urged, "Please, Miss Rivera, we have to go to the safe house. The helicopter is waiting on the roof." Camille looked at the sleeping boys. If Russo was right, staying here was a death sentence. But if he was lying, she opened the door a crack. Russo stood there, his arm in a sling, sweating. "Where is Dante?" she asked. "He's holding the perimeter. He's pinned down at the gate," Russo said fast. "He said to tell you, Iron Man pancakes." Camille froze. She had never told Dante the name of the pancakes. She had only told the boys, and Dante hadn't been in the kitchen when she named them. He had come in later. The only way Russo could know that name was if he had been listening, bugging the kitchen, or if he was the one watching the cameras when she said it. "He never said that," Camille said, her voice trembling. "Dante doesn't know about the Iron Man pancakes." Russo's face changed. The panic vanished, replaced by a cold, predatory sneer. He reached for his gun with his injured arm. "Smart girl," Russo spat. "Too smart for your own good." He kicked the door open, sending Camille stumbling back. He raised the gun, aiming it at the sleeping children. "Wake them up," Russo ordered. "Vieira wants the heirs, and if you scream, I'll put a bullet in the little one first." Camille's mind raced. She was unarmed. She was alone. And she had 3 seconds before he started shooting. "Okay," Camille said, raising her hands. "Okay, Russo, you win. Just don't hurt them." She moved towards the bed, blocking his view of the boys. As she did, her foot brushed against something on the floor. Leo's cricket bat. "Boys!" Camille screamed. "Code red, scatter." The triplets woke up instantly. They had drilled for this. They didn't scream. They rolled. Leo and Rocco dove under the bed. Enzo scrambled into the closet. Russo cursed and fired a shot into the mattress. Feathers exploded everywhere. "You stupid bastards!" He pistol-whipped Camille, sending her crashing into the wall. He turned to the closet where Enzo was hiding. "Come out, you little rat." Camille's vision blurred. She saw Russo reaching for the closet door. No, she saw the industrial glue bottle on the nightstand, Rocco's weapon of choice. She grabbed it. She uncapped it. And she lunged. She didn't aim for him. She aimed for his gun. She squeezed the bottle, squirting a thick stream of superglue directly into the ejection port and trigger mechanism of his pistol. Russo turned and pulled the trigger. Click! The gun jammed. The glue had seized the slide. Russo stared at the gun in shock. "What the—" "Now, boys," Camille screamed. "Attack!" It was ridiculous. It was impossible. It was Home Alone meets The Godfather. Leo rolled out from under the bed and swung the cricket bat with all his might, smashing it into Russo's kneecap. Russo howled and fell. Rocco jumped on his back, biting his ear. And Camille picked up the heavy brass lamp and brought it down on the back of Russo's head. He collapsed, unconscious, groaning on the Persian rug. Camille stood over him, panting, the lamp still in her hand. The triplets looked at her, then at the fallen giant. "Did we get him?" Enzo whispered from the closet. "Yeah," Camille breathed, dropping the lamp. "We got him." The door burst open again. Camille spun around, ready to fight the entire world. It was Dante. He stopped, staring at the scene. His treacherous head of security was unconscious on the floor, covered in feathers and superglue. His children were armed with sports equipment. And Camille Rivera looked like a Valkyrie of vengeance. "I take it back," Dante said, walking over to kick Russo's gun away. "You're not a governess. You're a bodyguard." Leo looked up at his father. "We protected the house, Papa. Just like you said." Dante dropped to his knees and pulled all three boys and Camille into a crushing hug. For the first time in years, the great Dante Moretti was crying. 3 months later, spring had finally come to the Saddle River estate, chasing away the grey chill of winter and the lingering shadows of the attack. The snow that had once covered the manicured lawns had melted, revealing vibrant green grass, where Leo, Rocco, and Enzo now played soccer without fear of reprimand. The broken library window had been replaced, the glass reinforced to withstand a siege. But more importantly, the heavy velvet drapes that used to block out the sun were now permanently tied back. The house, once a fortress of silence and cold marble, was filled with something entirely new. Noise. It was Sunday morning, a sacred time in the new Moretti household. The kitchen, once a sterile laboratory of high-end gastronomy, now smelled like a cozy diner. Warm vanilla, sizzling butter, and fresh coffee. Camille stood at the island, humming a tune from the radio as she orchestrated the chaos of Pancake Sunday. "Order up," Camille announced, flipping a golden-brown disc onto a waiting plate. 2 for Leo, with extra blueberries, 2 for Rocco with chocolate chips, and 1 for Enzo, because he's still insisting on reading the nutrition labels. Enzo, wearing a pair of blue glasses that made him look like a miniature professor, scrutinized his plate. "It's about the glycemic index, Camille. Refined sugar causes energy crashes. We have a math test tomorrow." "Eat your syrup, genius," she laughed, ruffling his hair. "You need the brain fuel." The kitchen door swung open, but unlike 3 months ago, nobody flinched. The air didn't drop 10 degrees. Instead, a comfortable warmth seemed to follow the man who walked in. Dante Moretti entered the room. The ruthless CEO who used to wear armor-like suits even on weekends was gone. In his place was a father wearing dark denim jeans and a soft cashmere sweater the color of charcoal. The lines of exhaustion that had etched themselves around his eyes had smoothed out, replaced by a quiet, steady contentment. He looked younger, lighter, a man who had finally put down a heavy burden. He walked straight to Camille, wrapping an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. The casual intimacy of the gesture still made her heart skip a beat. "Good morning," he murmured against her hair. "Morning," she smiled, leaning back into his solid warmth. "Coffee is ready. Black. 2 sugars. Just how you pretend you don't like it." "I don't want coffee," Dante said softly, his voice serious enough to make her turn around. "I want a renegotiation of terms." The clinking of forks stopped. The boys looked up, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Leo narrowed his eyes, protective as always. Rocco paused with a forkful of pancake halfway to his mouth. Camille wiped her hands on her apron, her pulse quickening. "Oh, is the quarterly bonus not enough? I did save your life twice, Mr. Moretti, and I successfully negotiated a peace treaty between Rocco and the mailman last week." "The money is irrelevant," Dante said, stepping back to look at her. His dark eyes, usually so guarded, were open and vulnerable. "My lawyers tell me that the current employment contract is insufficient. It doesn't cover the true scope of your duties." He took a step closer, invading her space in that way that used to terrify her, but now felt like coming home. "You are currently acting as chef, bodyguard, crisis negotiator, therapist, and—" Dante's voice thickened with emotion. "The love of my life. The contract needs to reflect that reality." Camille put down the spatula. Her hands were trembling. She looked at the boys, then back at Dante. The kitchen suddenly felt very small and very intimate. "So," Dante continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small, black, velvet box, "I am proposing a permanent merger. No 48-hour clauses. No exit strategy. Lifetime tenure." He dropped to one knee on the kitchen tiles, right there between the stove and the refrigerator. The triplets gasped in unison. Dante opened the box. Inside sat a diamond that was simple, elegant, and breathtaking. A vintage cut that spoke of permanence and history. Camille Rivera, Dante said, looking up at her with a devotion that burned brighter than the diamond. You saved my children when I couldn't. You saved me when I didn't want to be saved. Will you marry me? Will you be the mother these boys deserve, and the wife I need? Camille looked at the ring, swimming in her vision as tears filled her eyes. She looked at the man who had once terrified her, now kneeling on the floor of his own kitchen, offering her everything he had. She looked at the boys. They were practically vibrating with anticipation. Say yes, Rocco whispered loudly, unable to contain himself, or we'll get the superglue. Yeah, Leo added. We'll glue his knees to the floor. Camille laughed, a wet, joyful sound that broke the tension. The tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. I don't think I have a choice, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. If I leave, who's going to make the pancakes? And who's going to keep you out of trouble? Is that a yes? Dante asked, a hopeful, boyish smile breaking across his face. Yes, Camille whispered, pulling him up by his sweater. Yes, you idiot. Yes. Dante stood and pulled her into a crushing kiss, lifting her off her feet as if she weighed nothing. The kitchen erupted. The boys cheered, throwing napkins in the air like confetti, shouting and jumping around them. They were a strange, cobbled-together family. A reformed billionaire with a dark past, 3 brilliant and wild children, and a broke maid from the Bronx who had walked into the lion's den and tamed them all. They had scars, they had enemies, they had a history written in blood and secrets. But as Camille looked around the chaotic, syrup-scented kitchen, surrounded by the people who had become her world, she knew one thing for sure. They were no longer just survivors. They were a family, and they were absolutely unbreakable. And that is the incredible true story of Camille Rivera and the Moretti family. From a desperate eviction notice to a frantic battle for survival in a millionaire's mansion, Camille proved that sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a gun. It's courage, love, and a really good breakfast. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells me you want more stories like this. What would you have done in Camille's shoes? Would you have stayed for the 48 hours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new episode of real-life drama. I've got an even crazier story coming next week about a runaway bride and a secret prince, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.